Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, the Swansea City podcast. I'm Matt Barocco and I'm joined as ever by Steve Carroll. Afternoon, Steve.
Afternoon.
So we join you now after a 1-1 draw against Coventry at the Liberty on Saturday. Steve, we were hoping to, get Michael Duff's maiden win as Swans manager in the league. It wasn't to be, but to be fair, Coventry were a very neat and tidy side and expected to be up there or thereabouts at the end of this season as well.
Yeah, I think so. I think overall we can't really complain at a point. I don't think we did enough to win the game, certainly against what I would say was quite a good side. I mean, especially in the first half, they had a few chances, didn't they? Not so much in the second, but I think we've got to be realistic. That was a decent point for us, I think. Obviously, I think we're frustrated because we haven't won yet after 3 games. Not that it's any sort of disaster that sometimes gets painted, but you do often just want that first win on the board, don't you? So to not have it yet is a little bit frustrating, I think. But we've got to be realistic and say that I think a point was a fair result on Saturday.
Yeah, and I think people, even though we weren't able to get the win, we're starting to see a little bit more of maybe a bit more intensity in the Swans play and maybe seeing a little bit more shape to what Michael Duff team might end up looking like. Still a long way away from any sort of finished article, Steve, but it was less of a disaster than West Brom, put it that way.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, West Brom, we just gifted some really bad goals, didn't we? I mean, I don't think Coventry had too many, what I would say, clear-cut chances against us. I mean, I think the goal they scored was quite well worked, and I remember the feeling I got when I can't remember who scored, but when he took that shot, my first thought was we're in a bit of trouble here because it was from
6 yards out.
Yeah, it wasn't too far out, was it? You're fearing the worst at that point, and obviously it did go in. But I mean, that was by far their best opportunity, really. I mean, some of the other ones weren't too far off, but they would have been, what I would call decent goals, really. But the type of goals we don't usually concede, because obviously we've been used to conceding awful goals, haven't we? So,
Well, it's weird you say that because that's exactly what Michael Duff picked up on after the game. He said that the pleasing aspect is how well worked Coventry's goal was, which in its isolation sounds like a weird comment, but I guess the point he's trying to make there is if you watch any game of the Swans last season, we had to be the ones that worked so hard to score, and the opposition, very much like West Brom last week, were given gifts which they didn't really have to do a lot to do. So Coventry scoring a well-worked goal is when you can stand up and go, well, at least they've had to put something really impressive together rather than a gift.
Yeah, I mean, no one likes conceding goals, but as you say, I mean, you not every goal is preventable. You're never going to go through a season conceding 20 goals. I mean, I think the seasons we've had under the likes of John Hollins and Paulo Sousa, where and even Cooper to a point where we didn't let in many goals. You'll still always concede a few, wouldn't you? But the frustrating thing was always conceding really soft ones and similar types of goals all the time. So again, they did work the move well, to be fair, and finished it off. And yeah, it wasn't. I don't think you could pick as many holes in it as you usually could. So, that I say that's a good thing. You never say that conceding is a good thing, but they certainly weren't as bad as the ones at West Brom, which they were all preventable, really, weren't they?
It just, again, it's going to be a learning process, and the players are trying to adjust to a different style and different way of thinking as well. And I think Michael Duff talks about mentality quite a bit as well. So again, once again, Steve, to see us scoring and coming back into a game for the third league game running from a losing position has in itself its own kind of set of positives. I mean, we so often be the team that would work so hard to score a goal, then concede a sucker punch. So to see us, I think the big frustration is it's when we are starting a game, when we don't really start very quickly, and it takes us to the opposition to score to kick into life. And there's no difference here, really. On Saturday, we scored pretty much straight after Coventry did.
It was quite quick, wasn't it? I mean, it was one of the few times where we put a good ball into the box. I mean, I was looking at a lot of our players thinking they couldn't cross a bridge for a lot of the first half because some of the balls in were so bad. But a decent one went in, and it was great to see Yates get another goal, obviously. 2 and 3. And he hasn't had a great deal of chances, really, has he, in terms of efforts on goal?
In the West Brom game, he hit the bar as well. So you could say he could have had 3 and 3.
Yeah, so I think in what I would say maybe a more creative team, I will say at this moment in time, then you'd like to think there'd be even more, obviously. But, he's done well for us so far on that front, so we've got to be quite pleased. And yeah, as you say, I mean, you do always fear that the opposition have scored. They could get another, and certainly if you go more than one behind, you're in a big bad situation then. So to level out quite quickly was a little bit of a relief, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think I'd say it's fairly clear for most people to accept at this point that we are initially working on defensively shoring up. I mean, we've talked about being more difficult to beat, more difficult to score against. We've talked less about aggression from the front, and indeed we've seen less, Steve. I mean, we talked in the summer about Michael Duff, like a high press, high intensity game, as he called it, high octane football. He likes to people to pressure the opposition to lose the ball, run in their own half, let them concede throw-ins in dangerous areas and get the ball back in play as quickly as possible, etc., etc. We've all seen the press conferences and clips of how his Barnsley and Cheltenham teams like to play, but not seeing so much of that. But also we are seeing a little bit more of that defensive solidity. So is it as black and white as saying we're working on that at the moment, and once we've got that nailed, we'll hopefully see a little bit more creativity at the other end of the pitch?
It could be, couldn't it? I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day, as the saying goes, and we've got to just be patient. As boring as it is, repeating it over and over again, it's you're not going to see what we really want to see. I don't think early on, but I think if I'm honest, I would like to going forward. I would like to see a bit more entertainment and maybe a few better work moves and stuff like that, because it hasn't been brilliant to watch, as it so far. I think that's a fair comment, but these things do take a little bit of time. I remember Martin saying that we needed to work on the defensive side of the game first when he came in.
He did.
Because we didn't score many, did we, at the start? And I mean, we were conceding a few, and then it did improve a bit, and it can sort of take that little bit of time to click. I always like the great one I'll use is when Martinez was here, and I think after about 10 games, we were 10th in the league. And then we stormed it, didn't we? We were on a ridiculous run that started with a 5-0 win at Leighton Orient, I think. And then we went to Bournemouth and scored 4. And you're off and running. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, obviously, but it does just show that even the best managers we've had, it doesn't necessarily just click overnight, does it? So there is a need for patience. I do want to see more. I won't deny that either. I think we all want to see a bit more entertainment, I would say, so far, and because it's not been brilliant, is it? It's
just not been that easy on the eye, is it? I think. We're only 3 games in, and I think it'd be ludicrous for us to draw any long thought out conclusions about this. But due to popular demand, Steve, and it's been quite popular, is bringing in XG, because they always do this and talk about teams that are going well at the start and not going so well. We're 3 games in, so it is far too early to make any big assumptions from this. But we're actually currently at the lowest open play XG against in the division. Less than a goal in open play expected to have conceded. I'm not a massive thing of just relying on stats. Like, I know a few people who are listening will have a little chuckle about that, but it's still, even if you take it in isolation, you can't overly rely on it. But looking at the field of play as well and looking at how we're playing, you can see that we are looking more difficult to score against than perhaps we were last year or the year before.
It feels like that. I mean, the big problems we've had have been set pieces still, haven't they? So that's why that's not in there, and that figure would be higher. But yeah, like you say, from open play, it's not. I don't think Birmingham created a huge amount either, really, did they? And obviously it's the same in the other 2 games. So yeah, I think I do like XG to a point, I must admit, because I do think that you've got to use it over a large sample size rather than 3 games. I do like it over maybe a dozen or more games. I think there's clearly some flaws to XG. I'll give an example. Let's say now a penalty, you get a penalty. I think the chance of a goal is 0.8, I think. 0.8. Around that. So, but let's say the goalkeeper saves it, and then it comes straight back out to you. It's probably a 0.3 chance of a goal, maybe. You then got a 1.1 chance of a goal, but you can only score 1 goal from the move, because obviously you wouldn't have had the second chance without the first. So when it comes to that, then it's stuff like goal mouth scrambles. It could just shoot up off the scale. Whereas I like it just for like the first chance, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And it is like flawed to a point. I mean, I like it mainly because, like, let's say you can paint as much as you want about how many shots you've had, but they could all be from outside the box from a mile, or they could all be from 6 yards out.
Williams classic.
It doesn't necessarily tell you then, does it? Like I like I say, it measures like your quality of chance, doesn't it? But there's flaws to most things, aren't there? I think that's the XG flaw. is that if you don't,
we
there's
saw
a rebound
it
thing.
in Perot's first season as well, didn't we? He always massively outscored his XG. Still wouldn't have fancied that ball dropping to anyone else 20 yards out.
Yeah.
But XG will never favour you in those positions. He just happened to arrow them in the bottom corner.
Yeah, he was superb at that side of thing, wasn't he? But then, I think I think we said before, I mean, when we get to around the Plymouth away game, which is about a dozen games in, it's the second international break. I think when you start weighing everything up there, it's fine. But I mean, at this stage of the season, you could just have one day, for example, where you're brilliant, and one day when you're awful, and it will skew the whole stats, won't it?
Yeah.
Let's say we had a day on, I don't know, you could. Do you remember when Wales played Russia at Euro 2016? And they were so bad, awful. We were running forward every time we were getting in. We thought we were going to score. You could play a team like that, and your stats,
like world beaters.
Yeah, but your XG will shoot up because you're creating so many good chances. Or you could be like Burnley, who I know have only played one game yet, but they happen to play Man City. So your stats are not going to look good because you're playing the team that basically beats everybody. So that's why you have to.
The same thing about Burnley against that Man City game. The same way when we played Man City in our first game in the Premier League, came away from it having lost, thinking we're going to be fine, yeah. And I think the same about Burnley because you get that vibe when you watch and you have to take into account, but XG obviously doesn't.
Yeah, I think for us in that game, it was a case of I remember thinking we've had quite a lot of the ball here against a very good team, and obviously we didn't realise at that point that they would go on to win the league.
No.
But I was thinking, well, if we've had a lot of the ball here, then we've got Wigan and Sunderland, I think, for the next couple of games. Thinking
that pesky debutant came on for them that day, didn't he?
We're bound, Aguero. Well, we're bound then to have a lot of the ball against the lesser teams, and that gives you that bit of confidence, doesn't it? But yeah, I mean, I think we can have a proper look at stats another time. But they are. I mean, possession's another classic. But remember that Barnsley game?
I keep referring back to that one.
Not 900 passes, but not many shots.
Game.
I remember the first game, especially. Sorry, the first half. I just been bored out of my skull.
Well, I think it was Ncham and Patterson that came on.
Yeah, and changed it.
Late on, and they both scored or created, or I know at least Ncham scored. So I think in that game, it wasn't a case of, keep blowing and seeing what happens and keep going. It wasn't that at all because we actually literally had to make a tactical switch to get the goals. Otherwise, that would have seemed like an absolute battering 0-0.
Yeah, exactly. So that just shows you things are skewed to a point, and you have to use stats, I think, based on quite a few games.
Add in with your eyes, I think. You never get a better substitute than your eyes.
Oh, exactly. I mean, you always think this. I mean, if you watch a game on TV and then you can't always see the whole play, can you? Because, the camera's focusing on the ball, but you can see, for example, who's showing for the ball and this type of thing, who's making runs, and you can't often... I think I've had conversations previously with people where I've been at a game and someone might have been watching on TV and we've had different opinions, and it's interesting sometimes because it may look a certain way on TV, but then if you're at a game, it can be different, as you say. And I would always say, from a scouting point of view, you can use stats to look at people, but I would never want to buy somebody without watching them in person. But also, of course, stats will never tell you a player's personality and how they will fit in. I mean, there'll be plenty of players with great stats and all this type of thing, but it doesn't tell you if that bloke is a twat, does it?
Yeah, and we spoke the other week about Grimes' ball to Cullen for the equaliser against Birmingham. He might have, in another game, got a 99.7 pass success rate, and in the Birmingham game might have had an 83% pass success rate.
But also, he's helped set up a goal.
He's made the difference, which is what matters at the end of the day, doesn't it? Finish the XG chat now with just the fact that we are currently 7th in most expected goals as well at 5.21. So I didn't expect that, and that's another point of us saying, well, do you know what?
Is that just from open play?
That's just XG in general.
I was going to say, I bet a lot of them are from West Brom, where
those couple of goals.
Not just that. There was a couple of goal-mouth scrambles, wasn't there, for example? So again, then that means your XG for a certain chance for one of the goals could be 0.7 or something. Yeah. Because you've had 2 shots from close range. Yeah. One blocked, one gone in.
Right, boys, you know who you are. You've had your XG chat, which you were looking for. Move on from that now to big news that happened since we last spoke, which is Matt Grimes came as a shock to all of us, I think, extending his contract with the Swans, signing a new 4-year deal, which sees him go through to the summer of 2027. We have different views on what that means for Grimes and his immediate future, Steve. But for now, it can be no doubt about it. That is fantastic news for everyone.
Yeah, brilliant. The club seem to have learned a key lesson, really, that you don't want players going into the last year of their contracts where obviously they hold the cards, where I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that later, but they've avoided that. Grimes on a new contract, really good news. I obviously said previously that I thought he might go to Southampton after they'd sold a couple of people, but I don't think that will happen now. I don't think he'd have signed that deal otherwise. So yeah, I'm quite optimistic, and I do actually think if Grimes was going to go, this was the time for him to go, because there would have been a manager at Southampton that we think probably would have been interested in taking him. I think he's 27, so if he wants to go and better himself and think about playing in the Premier League, then I think I wouldn't have blamed him if he decided that now was the time to go. But I think now he may well be looking that I'm happy here, I want to stay here for the long term, and yeah, obviously he signed that contract, and it's good news. It's well done by the club, and it also shows that he must have at least a decent relationship with the manager and stuff like that as well, because you do never know when new managers come in, they have different opinions, don't they, and stuff like that, and different bonds with certain players. But it must still show that Grimes is happier under a new manager.
Yeah, and look, it should put a lot of the dissenting voices quiet for a little bit to see that the club captain has gone and done that. I tend to think that it means that there has been no approach from Southampton. There's been no sniff, whatever. He's probably got a very lucrative offer on the table, and at his age, he's looking to secure his future. It's his prime of his career, Steve. I tend to think that if an approach was to come from Southampton next week at the end of the window, we would still perhaps look at it, but it puts us, even if that was the case, in such a strong position now. We're not talking about what do we do, what can we do, whatever. It would have to be something silly now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we've got an incredibly strong hand here, and let's be honest, Southampton are not our favourite club at the moment, given their actions. So, yeah, I think now they might have to break the bank to get anywhere near getting him, and yeah, if they do decide to break the bank, then fine. But I really don't think that they will. So, yeah, look, I'd be surprised if he went now.
Since then, more rumblings. They're your favourite club anyway. But a report yesterday of Sky Sports that we had received an offer of up to £10 million to Nathan Wood, which on the face of it, Steve, let's be honest, represents a fantastic bit of work from the club again. Signed him for, 400k a year ago, so yeah. It's a fantastic bit of business. If it was to happen, if it was to materialise, if I was to add a little bit of spanner in the works and say the cash up front would be, or the initial payment would be 7 million with up to 3 million more in potential add-ons. I expect you can be looking at an Obafemi and Burnley situation there, which may come into play on promotion, etc., etc. But also the fact that there is reportedly a tidy-sized sell-on clause to Middlesbrough. I could understand on the face of it why the club wouldn't necessarily accept the first offer here.
Yeah, I mean, look, quite often you get in a situation, don't you, where you don't accept the first offer anyway, because it just gives the impression you're desperate to sell. And obviously he's a player that's in the team, so in general you don't really want to lose those type of players. But I mean, I don't think it's a bad offer, I've got to be honest, but I think maybe we could try and push them for a little bit more, especially given who it is. So yeah, and we know what Martin is like as well, don't we?
He loves ex-players.
And he very much, he has his people in mind. I mean, let's be honest, Ogbene, I know we didn't get him in the end, but he was pretty desperate for him, we're led to believe, aren't we? I mean, he was after him for a couple of transfer windows, stuff like that. And he doesn't really like to settle for other players, does he? If you know what I mean. The impression I get with him is he's got his first choices and he doesn't really have backups, does he? I don't think. And then when the backups have come in, like the lone players that maybe have come in late, doesn't tend to go near them, does he?
No.
So I think they may well come back in for him. And the other thing is, we know Southampton now have got serious cash.
A lot of money.
Hell of a lot of money. So,
over 100 million there now, easy. Sitting in there to be spent. And
and we don't know if more people are not going to go from there. I mean, it's still, over a week of the window left yet, isn't it?
Here's the other conversation which we're going to move on to now. Just to tail that off, I mean, keep Nathan Wood for now and see. We've got the option in his contract to extend from the year. So
I can't believe you haven't done that yet. If it's on the club side, what are they doing? You literally just press the button.
Is it? Yeah. It's mad. I don't know, but I'm hoping it is as straightforward as us just going, well, we don't need to. We'll do it in January. Doesn't matter. Maybe it involves an extra payment to him or something.
But sometimes these clauses have to be agreed with the player as well. Didn't Elise have a similar one at Palace? I know he signed an extension now anyway, isn't he? Because Chelsea were interested. But yeah, I'm sure I read that Chelsea couldn't just activate the clause by bidding. I think the player had to say he wanted to go as well or something. It's
right.
more complicated than what you would have thought it is. But I mean, I'm looking at it in the same way as when Patterson signed. It was the club's clause. They activated it. Obviously, for whatever reason, he got annoyed, didn't he? But yeah, I mean, you're obviously going to activate it, even if you say you're going to offer another deal, don't you? You do it just to basically ward off interest and buy yourself a little bit of time to offer a new deal, don't you? I mean, to not activate it if it's on the club side is lunacy, but I don't know. I guess we'll see. The truth is, if it doesn't get activated at a fans forum, somebody's going to ask that question, and it could be me.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you say it could be more control, let's just hope that at the point there's no need at the moment to do it, and as there's no pressing urgency, there's other things that the club are working on. Let's hope it's as simple as that. And of course, we set our stall out for what we think Wood is worth with 2 years left on his deal, as that would effectively be what it is, and value him accordingly. Do I think we'd be offered £10 million for a player who was knowingly entering the final year of his contract? Possibly not. I mean, we've struggled to get bids for Perot around that price, and Perot scored 40 goals in 2 years. So you think that, as strikers being hot as property, you think that maybe it's just a case of the club not rushing to do it. Let's hope that's the case, and we hold the cards. I am going to mention Perot because there has been talk of Leeds being interested, but figures bandied around whether they were to offer 15 now. Phil Hay, the Leeds reporter, has said that the numbers are a lot lower than that, looking around £7-8 million to spend. Again, just doesn't feel like the sort of numbers we'd entertain. But it could just be one of those things that Leeds are using to appease their fans. It could be another thing whereby Perot and the club are just developing that interest, trying to start some sort of bidding war, because we've seen through the summer how the club have orchestrated their business, Steve. It's really interesting to see this one play out, because on the other end of the coin, you got Southampton, seeing at the moment if they're going to be expecting a bid from Everton for Shea Adams, and if that comes in and they're looking for a striker, we know Russell Martin's a big fan, and again, massive amount of money for them to spend if he wants to get his way in that club early doors. He's already taken Flynn Downs on loan. He does like his old players at his clubs, doesn't he?
Yeah, but that Manning's gone there obviously as well, isn't he? So I could see him go to either, to be honest. So I don't think Southampton will buy him unless somebody goes, because they've got do they need a striker? I'd say probably not. Whereas that's why I thought they would go for Grimes, because they obviously do need a midfield player. And as you said, Downs has gone there this week, which isn't a great shock. But Leeds, I think, are pretty desperate. They don't have a striker fit today, really. Bamford's been injury prone. The guy they bought from, I think it was from either Leipzig or Salzburg, one of the Red Bull ones, Rutter, has been poor since he went in there. And I think he's the only fit striker at the moment. And I think that the Leeds issue mainly seems to be that they've obviously let a lot of players go on loan. Apparently, a lot of them had loan clauses if they got relegated. Absolute lunacy, really. So now they haven't brought in a lot of money. They've brought the wage bill down, but that's why I think they've brought in someone like Rodon on loan, because I don't think they could afford to do things. But now Tyler Adams has gone to Bournemouth for 20 million. I think that might change things. That means now they've got cash. That's why I think they're sniffing around Perot. I do think they genuinely are serious, but whether we reach a deal or not, I don't know. Because like I said, they've got 8 million, which has been mentioned. It's not great, is it? They're going to have to go higher than that. I think they're going to have to go to 12 at least.
Yeah, I would think so, and rightly so. I mean, we set our stall out earlier in the summer with Perot. We've spoken about it on this podcast a couple of times as well. Very much like the fact that we are conducting our business completely differently to how we've done it to be honest with you, I say since the takeover, but even since before that, under the old regime, we didn't used to conduct it quite like this. So I'm really impressed with the professionalism, and I don't think this club will be in a position to find themselves underselling, because they know now they've got people at the club that know the worth and know what people have. We're not as naive potentially as we were this time last year.
Well, I think the real allegation that we thrown at them in the last few years was the old soft touch on deadline day, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And then making ridiculous decisions either way, and and realistically, you've got to say most of them haven't come off, have they? So, but you get the feeling now if deadline day comes that they may not fold, and I'm not saying they won't do any business, and they may they may sell for a little bit less than what they wanted, but they certainly wouldn't be selling. I always hark back to the window after we first got relegated, where on that deadline day, people did go for lunacy money. Like the likes of Fernandes went for less than what we bought him for. I think Matt went for $1 million, when realistically we didn't have any other centre-backs at the club apart from Van der Horn, because Roden hadn't played a first-team game.
Yeah.
Like those type of deals we were doing were, for me, a club that was on the brink of administration.
We were struggling to survive at that point, weren't we?
Yeah, we were. But even then, we were accepting deals that were really bad, weren't we?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They were... Even if you accept some of them, they were like, I'd always argue that a Matt, for example, shouldn't have gone, because $1 million for somebody who might be on 20 grand a week or something, when you don't have a centre back. I think it was 4 million.
I mean, that's ridiculous.
It is, but I'd say 4 million when you're on, and probably on 50 grand a week. I can understand why maybe they thought they had to do that, but whereas I think someone like a Matt, they should have gone, nah, we can't. It's not for the place in the squad. It's not worth £1 million. And those wages, because we physically haven't got anybody else.
Yeah.
From that point of view, so I get that. I still wasn't happy with the Fernandes deal. Don't get me wrong, but to actually leave a manager without 2 centre halves is just a joke, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You'd expect that when Petty was here, wouldn't you, and stuff like that.
Well, that's what you tried to do, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
You tried to sack off the squad.
But, that's what I mean. You don't behave like that. It's just absurd. But I think those days are long gone now. I think that. We are a bit more serious again behind the scenes, and I don't think you can do a number on us on deadline day. But unfortunately, I don't want this clip being played and going viral. I'll be honest. So please don't let me down now.
No, absolutely. We'll hope that our instinct and what we've seen so far prove to carry on through till 11 p.m. on September 1st, when the transfer window closes. We will get a podcast in before then, but probably not on deadline day evening. So it's probably going to be a little bit premature for that. Hopefully we'll have a few little snippets of what's going to happen leading up to then. But let's look ahead now to this weekend's game, which is Preston away. Preston had a good start. 7 points of the first 3 games. They've had a solid start to the season, and probably looking to follow that up with another home win. I mean, you look at that and you think they're in a good position at the moment, and a solid team.
Yeah, they often tend to be that way, don't they? I mean, quite steady really at this level. I mean, I think over the last 20 odd years or whatever, they've spent a lot of time at this level, haven't they? They've always had this reputation, haven't they, really, Preston, for being quite a well-run club, don't really overstretch themselves. They have tended to have a few good signings that they may sell on and stuff. Been close to the Prem a few times, haven't they? When you think about it, I mean, they've lost a few playoff finals and not going there, not for a while now, mind. But they're probably overachieving. Or in general, that's what they do, isn't it? I mean, they're sort of similar to us, I guess, in a sense, in terms of, I think Preston is population-wise is quite similar to Swansea. So but I mean, I don't think it's going to be as lively as last time we played them, is it?
No, well, you'd think not. You would think not. I mean, they tend to be these days quite shored up at the back, which is something we've seen since Freddie Woodman went there. Really, last year they scored practically nothing and conceded nothing for the first 7 or 8 games last year.
They had a lot of 0-0s to start, didn't it? It was like a mad stat. It's like you couldn't try it. Like, you'd be defensively, you would be like doing cartwheels really, but then you'd be on your hands and knees with your...
You'd be infuriated in a way, because you'd be thinking, we've kept 4 clean sheets in 6 games, and we're only on 5 points.
You'd be wanting to do what Nigel Pearson wanted to do to that bloke, wouldn't you? Just be an ostrich and just not watch. You'd be delighted with the defensive stuff. Wouldn't want to watch it though, would you?
Oh God, no.
I mean, just...
Another 0-0.
I know, you must be thinking at that point as well, just must be a couple of players short here, maybe someone that can stick the ball in the net and someone maybe a bit creative, but... Yeah, look, I mean, it's hard to be too critical, isn't it? Because if you're not conceding goals, then it's, certainly, that Russell Martin certainly could have learned something from them.
What's the old football adage is, a attacks win games and defences win titles, don't they?
In general, yes.
You know, you think that you need to be able to keep them out the other end. You can't forever outscore opposition. I remember Blackpool's season in the Premier League was a good...
they weren't far off, mind.
They had a points total. They should have kept them up every other season. I think it was
I think at the bottom, I do think it might be slightly different because draws don't keep you up to it. You have to get 10 wins, don't you? And then a few draws.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. If you
remember we said it under Carlos Carvajal, didn't we?
Yeah,
he was
trying
going for it. We'll be fine.
But exactly, Carvajal tried to keep us up with draws because he was too scared of things. So I actually think Blackpool sort of had a decent approach in terms of they were looking to think at a lot of maybe the teams around them, thinking, right, well, let's have a go with them and try and win. And I think they did get close to 40 points.
They did get, I'm sure it was like 41, 42, which
I don't think it was that. I think it was more like about 38 or 39. Okay. But they were... The other thing for Blackpool was I think they had Man United on the last day, and you just think, well, you need those little things maybe to go for you sometimes, don't you? And you don't want that on the last day. And obviously, I think as usual, it was Wigan, wasn't it, that got out of it, in spite of spending almost the entire season in the bottom three.
Well, they did that for 3 years in a row, didn't they? Which was
until Tiandali, Schechter, and Rangel sent them down.
It would be the Swans, wouldn't it? Steve, you're going, but not to Preston.
No, I'm going to, well, if you're up in that neck of the woods and it's a bank holiday, then you've got to go to the only place that, is calling your name, the Vegas of the North, a.k.a. Blackpool.
I've got a big problem with this, because I don't understand why it's called the Vegas of the North. It could be called the Benidorm of the North or the Benidorm of the UK. It makes sense. It's exactly like that. It is nothing like what Vegas is.
It's aspirational, just like Vegas for me. I mean, you've
full of glitz and glamour.
Exactly, where you've got the Vegas Strip, you've got the Blackpool Promenade. I mean, you've got the Blackpool Tower, but they've got a cheap version.
The who's who of celebrities turning up and all that.
Sophie Ellis-Bextor's turning the lights on the week after.
Oh my God!
I mean, you've got you can drink as much as you want. I mean, high glamour hotels.
Oh yeah, and you're staying in one of them.
Amusement park. You've even got the coastline, which you don't have in Vegas, but I suppose they do have sand, don't they?
It's nothing like Vegas, that's why. What's the weather like?
There'll be the sun will be shining, never rains in Blackpool.
What will it be? The Vegas, the desert rain you're getting for some reason. Well, what do you think about I see you're going up for a full weekender. It's the August Bank Holiday weekend. I'd probably have a better view of this game on Saturday. You'd probably still be hungover.
Well, we have had a little bit of news, which is not great either. There's a train strike. I looked at buses, and it's an hour and a half, so it's going to have to be taxi, innit? So that is a bit annoying. So if anyone is listening to this, and I bet there are one or two that are going to Blackpool, just bear that in mind. So that bit isn't ideal. But
no, but if you also hit the term Vegas of the North, enjoy a little wry smile to yourself now when you know he's got to get a taxi.
What I would say is, though, that I think for some people, that might just tempt them to go, do you know what, why? I don't really want to leave the Vegas of the North anyway. So, I'm not even going to bother with the game. But,
About the game, because it's ridiculous. How do you see us setting up? Do you think it's going to be, again, tried and tested with Yates and Perot up front and the same sort of start? And he hasn't really swapped it up much at the moment. He's changed one player here, one player there, but we're still waiting to see Ginnelly get a start or
I think my major concern is that if Yates and Patino have got mates still from their spells of their former club and decide to enjoy themselves Friday night and then they're not in the team. But look, I don't think you're going to see many changes realistically. No. What I do think is because we've got that Bournemouth game, I think you might see a few like Ginnelly and maybe Allen starting in that one. Then you do wonder for Bristol City. They might come into contention to start. I think at the moment the manager probably feels as if they're not up to starting, if that makes sense. So I don't see many changes. I think you'll probably see the same team unless, I suppose, if something happens with Perot, then there's always a chance that he might not play, even if he's still here. They may look at it and go,
well, a fit bid on the table.
Yeah, I mean, and Wood, I suppose, could be the same thing, couldn't it? There could be a...
Well, I hope not, because
I agree.
Struggling then, aren't we?
Well, we need to bring a centre-half in, don't we? So,
although it might force the four at the back.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, it might. So I think you will see the same team, but there's certainly things can change. I mean, it's Wednesday afternoon now or Wednesday evening. Look, a lot can change, certainly as closer you get to the window. So yeah, I think if all goes well, you'll see the same team. But I think there's certainly potential for curveballs yet.
Yeah. What do you think the score is going to be?
I don't know really. I'm not convinced we're going to go there and win. I mean, they've had a good start, haven't they? And our record there down the years not great. We did win there when Ferry Boulder won the goal, didn't we? I was there that night. That's the only time I've seen us win there. I mean, I suppose that when you think of Preston, there'll be one or two listening to this who, probably one of the
most famous,
the all-time great away days. I mean, my father was there. I'm assuming yours was he?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I mean, I think everybody knows somebody from that generation that was there. Bizarrely, I found out there's 2 Swans fans I know that are huge Swans fans, and they actually didn't go on that occasion. I was actually amazed to find anybody, if you know what I mean, of that age group, because it does feel like everybody went. I mean, taking 10,000 up there is unthinkable, really, isn't it? And well, I'm sure whoever was there, it's got to be in one of the top 5 ever, isn't it? One of the great.
The thing is, it's still, for someone who wasn't there and wasn't involved in that generation at all. You mentioned Preston away, and even for me, that game is the first one that comes to my head, because of how famous it is.
Yeah, I mean, everyone's seen the clips, haven't they?
Yeah.
I know when the third went in, my father told me that his glasses come off. He just managed to catch them. So otherwise, that could have been miserable. My father's eyesight has never been great, so he would have had I think they had a minibus up there, and I think everyone slept all the way home, from what he said.
Exhaustion. Celebrating.
I think we know what it's like when the big games come. I mean, I always think like this with Cardiff, and people often say, like, on the way home, why is everyone so quiet? And it can be like that even if you've had a jubilant win. And I just think everybody is drained, because from
emotionally
the moment,
as well.
Yeah, because when you wake up in the morning for that game, it's on your mind. You're on edge. You might go for food and drinks and stuff. You can't relax during the game, and it's like that for any big game. It would have been like that at Preston. So I think when we did eventually win, and obviously it took us in the first division, as much as there would have been joy, I bet when it sunk in, there was this relief, if you know what I mean, and just you're so tired because of and as usual, the Swans didn't really do it the easy way. They were coasting, and Preston had come back into it. They needed a win, didn't they? I think, to stay up. So obviously they were going to throw everything at it, and we broke away and obviously got the winner. But I think the other delicious thing about that day was that Cardiff needed us to win to keep them up. So if whatever's called it, so Cardiff had to be sort of happy that we won, even though that we went into the first division. And they would have had a thing of, if Preston had won, I think they would have gone down. But then obviously we wouldn't have gone up. But they couldn't win, basically, could they, on the day?
Yeah. They were never going to play in our division the next season.
Yeah, they weren't. But obviously they knew that to stay where they were, that
we needed
their arch nemesis were going to go into the top division. So
yeah.
Don't
have a favour there. Yeah. Well, enjoy your weekend. I mean, let's hope that Michael Duff gets his first win, and you can celebrate
in the Vegas of the North.
I was actually probably going to avoid calling it that, but there we go. Yeah, you're going to go up there and have a good weekend, I'm sure, and there'll be a lot of people join you. If you are one of those, safe journey. Remember what Steve said about the train strike, and make sure you look after yourselves and enjoy the Vegas of the North, as it's called. But from myself and Steve, we'll be back next week to talk about the Bournemouth Cup game and indeed Preston away. But from us for now, thanks for listening. Bye-bye.